Today, I have a really special guest here, and everybody's going to want to hear this compelling story. This is Mr. Adam Buzbee of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1005 or 1005. Mr. Adam Buzbee, thank you for coming out because this is a truly important story that I think all the people of Rochester and really other people in other cities are going to want to know what's going on with this story, sir. So thank you for talking with us today, all.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the chance to get to come and speak and share our story, the driver's story, the dispatcher's story. So we really appreciate any chance we get to highlight them.
And this is a story that, you know, kind of gradually unfolded over the years. I mean, for me, my journey was different on this story than your journey a little bit because I came at it from that internationalist, like that thing of finding out that our local Rochester Transit company is actually not owned by the people of Rochester, though we call it, public transportation or public transit. Rochester Public Transportation, we have it, but then it's a private company. So I had, and maybe you and I might not see eye to eye on all of that. I don't know. We haven't talked about that. But what I respect about the work you do is that you're coming from it a perspective of trying to protect union workers, any workers, union or not. You're trying to protect, common people inside a super large organization. Do you maybe I'm talking too much already. I don't want to.
Oh, you're good. But yeah, that's right. That's why I'm so passionate is for my coworkers, the people I work with. I've been working 16 years at the bus company. Started out at Rochester City Lines, um, and so I care about my coworkers. I care about the passengers, and that's ultimately why I ran for this position. Is for betterment of all of us.
And I remember when Rochester did have its own local company owned by people right here in Rochester. It was a Rochester transit system that you knew who was on it, you knew who owned it, you knew who was working there, and all of the buses. When you saw it go by, you knew that was Rochester. And what I kind of fell into was realizing that our local transit lines were purchased by a Swedish equity firm called EQT uh, back in, and I believe it was 2021 or 22. But that company normally picks up companies and then chops them up and sells them off for scrap, the way that companies did in the 1980s. The film Wall Street kind of made that whole Wall Street Raider concept famous. But in this case, in the case of Rochester, what was interesting was that this EQT company turned around and pitched our Rochester Public Transit to a French company called Transdev, and Transdev, uh, in turn, is 39 or 34% owned by the German company, the Rethmann Group, or the Rethmann family, which is one of the oldest and wealthiest families in Germany. And I spoke about this a couple times at City Council, and then it was just I always saw you at City Council meetings. You've changed a lot since then, by the way. Your diet. I did not recognize you the last two times I saw you in public. I didn't recognize you because your diet is working for you. So, uh, you know,
Appreciate that.
keep it up. Keep it. Do as I say, not as I do. Because it's working for you. So, what is happening? Because there's been huge amounts of money involved in acquiring. Transdev becomes North America's leading operator of public transportation with the completion of First Transit's acquisition. And so in the United States and Canada, and then I believe throughout Great Britain, it means that this one company owns a lot of public transportation in the United States, and then also First Student, I believe. I'm not looking at that right now, but I think First Student is in that. But I don't want to be off the line on that info, but there's also some info I had on TransDev that goes way back. I mean, sure, you can be a large company. That's great. I mean, congratulations. Um, so yeah, I got a lot of data here, a lot of articles that I can post in the comments section below this. But what's happening with the transit union in your perspective in terms of workers' rights? Because it's been in the news a lot lately.
Well, we've been having to fight and you're right. I just wanted to touch on that with Transdev, and because I didn't realize this actually until recently. I knew it was a French-owned company. I did not know that it was a French government company. So the French government, actually owns 66% of the shares of Transdev. So we're actually owned by the French government, and I got to say, I don't care too much for the way they run things. Um,
That's astonishing to think that our own government can't own. Why can't our government own it? Why can't that be owned by the government here in Rochester? It's after all, it's a municipal. I didn't know that Transdev was owned by the French government. That's weird.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I just to think about that we're in the United States of America working for another country's government. It just blows my mind. And like I said, I didn't realize this until a week ago or 2 weeks ago when I read an article about the German group that's potentially now going to buy the French government's rest of its shares, and then will be owned by the French. So we're looking at potentially going through this whole fiasco again sometime in the near future if all the reports are right, which is kind of bizarre. But what's kind of been happening is we lost a our general manager. He took a job elsewhere, and instead of letting our assistant general manager run the operation, which is, kind of falls on her to do because she is the assistant general manager in his vacancy, they brought some guy named Scott McClellan from North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. He lives there. He's been flying back every week or so.
He flies
And
back to Raleigh, North Carolina every week or so. What? How do you spell? So Scott is obviously Scott. How do you spell his last name? M.
MC capital CLELLAN, I believe.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
like the northern general spelt his name. I believe he was
Just
a
like
general.
George B. McClellan, Lincoln's general who never left Washington or near the
Correct.
Pacific. I remember that guy. Uh, uh, so I found a bunch of references to Scott McClellan, but this is interesting. So he's from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm sorry, back. I skipped your record. Can you go on? Um,
So yeah, they brought him in. So Paul Buchanan, who is our regional manager, he lives up in the cities. He claims to be from Rochester. I don't know if he was born here, raised here, but he did spend some time here, I guess, as a youth. He is the regional manager. I think he runs over 50 properties. So anyway, back to the original deal. After Ken stepped down, they brought Scott in from North Carolina, and after being there not even a week, he wasn't there very long, maybe a week. He started terminating people, suspending people, um, and he was suspending people for doing what they were trained and how they were trained by the former general manager. Also, uh, they suspended me, which is their third. I believe it's their third attempt. They suspended me this time for 5 days. And I believe, in my opinion, that it is standard union busting tactics. Go in and go. It's very apparent that they're after me as the executive board member and the union rep for that location. And it's becoming more and more apparent the more times that they try to suspend me. Now, this last time that they suspended me, I got the write up here somewhere, but one of the things they said in there was Um, During a meeting, I exhibited uncontrollable anger. And it so happened that I had conferenced in our assistant vice president. So when David Stiggers, who is our president, and myself met with Paul to discuss my suspension, Mr. Stiggers told Paul, he said, Paul, our vice president was in on the call. Adam never raised his voice. He never used profanity, and he talked pretty monotone. And Paul looked at him and said, yeah, but you didn't see the look on his face, which is astounding to me that you could suspend somebody for the look on their face. And to me, the fact that they are using a look on somebody's face to suspend somebody is very obvious that they're trying to go after that person because it's
Mm.
utterly ridiculous. And there's some more facets to that that I want, if you'll remind me to go into about his excuse of why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, it's also, it's so apparent that when, if you have to grasp at straws to the degree of saying, so the look on somebody's face so triggered you, I would think a guy from North Carolina would be a little bit tougher than that. But if if I could share, the timeline of Scott McClellan. I mean, there must be a lot of people involved in transportation named Scott McClellan, but I found a reference to Capital Area Transit in Raleigh, North Carolina. Is that possibly where he was working prior
I
to
do,
coming to Rochester?
from everything I have found, I believe that to be true.
So if he was coming to us from Raleigh, North Carolina, there's also a reference to, and that reference is 2017. There's a reference to one Scott McClellan from November 1st in 2011, where bus riders claim harassment at downtown Raleigh station. A Raleigh city official said Tuesday that he sees nothing wrong with private subcontractors' policy toward loitering at a bus station, even though some bus riders, see it as harassment. But this story from 2011 is kind of a turnaround case. It's a media isn't really telling us what happened in that case. But I'm just saying, so from 2011 to 2017, we have a Scott McClellan in Raleigh, North Carolina, but then suddenly there's a reference to a Scott McClellan being tapped as public. Scott McClellan is present at a state meeting in 2016. Okay, so the timeline is it goes on, but he's tapped as TAPS manager. Transdev appoints new TAPS manager, so he becomes a TAPS manager in Sherman, Texas, or well, if this is the same Scott
Well,
McClellan,
he did say he spent time in Sherman, Texas.
you can say that.
He did tell me that he spent time in Sherman, Texas.
So what doesn't make sense to me is that he's suddenly working in Texas as a general manager. Sorry. It says former GM Scott McClellan left to manage a bus company in North Carolina. So he's leaving he's leaving Texas to go to North Carolina. So if this is the same guy, he seems to be between two places. So I just found that. It could be different people. It could be different people, but all of a sudden, when the general manager in Rochester is gone, all of a sudden we have one Scott McClellan from North Carolina suddenly working in Rochester, Minnesota. So what I'm getting at, you see what I'm getting at with I don't even have to. I mean, that dog is hunting. Something's going on. So maybe people don't know what a union buster's activities would normally be, but a union buster would be a person dispatched to go after unions and union officials. And then so within a week or so, or just as soon as he gets off the airplane in Rochester, he starts suspending people. And has he fired a lot of people too?
Three right now.
Well, three. So three people have lost their jobs. So that's interesting. But
Yeah.
he goes
Yeah.
back to Raleigh and he spends time down in Raleigh, but he lives now, he's working in Rochester. So
Well, what he seems to do is he comes in, he does a bunch of write-ups or suspensions or whatever he's doing, and then he flies out back to North Carolina and he's there for a few days, and then he comes back and he does a few more write-ups and it causes a little bit more chaos, and then he flies out again. So it seems like his purpose, to me looking at it, is he's coming in to sow a bunch of chaos, and then he's flying out. He has no long-term interest in Rochester, and it's amazing to me. I've reached out to city council and city staff, and I don't understand why they're letting this continue on and treat Rochester people in this way. I mean, most of our drivers live in Rochester. They work in Rochester. They play in Rochester. They pay taxes in Rochester.
they pay taxes
And
in Rochester. They pay property taxes in Rochester because they want to live in the community where they work and serve. Thank you. Sorry.
yeah, so no, you're good. And so it's affecting it's affecting them. And um, it's kind of interesting. I talked to Paul about my case specifically, and he'll say, "Well, it's not us, it's the client." He blames the client, which is the city. And I know it's not the city council that gets involved in that, but the city staff. So I have asked the city staff. I was like, "So is he going after me on your behalf or your request?" And I have gotten word back from the city staff that they don't do have anything to do with employee, um, discipline suspensions. They're not involved in that. That's what they contract Transdev to. However, when you talk to Paul, he says it's the client. So I'm confused on where this is coming from and how this is going, but that's just kind of getting the runaround when I'm trying to find out exactly because I've been there 16 years and I had nothing in my file. I've never been reprimanded, never been, I never knocked mirrors off. I didn't crash buses. I had a clean, nothing in my file until I became union rep, basically, till about in August, I believe, they decided to so it's pretty telling when you can work somewhere for 16 years and never have any issues. And then all of a sudden, you should see my file right now that I got with grievances and write-ups and all this stuff just for me alone, how thick it is since August, September, somewhere around in there.
I found more Scott McClellan's. I know that the name Scott McClellan it's a popular Southern name, right? But I mean, how many Scott McClellans would end up working in transit and in transit at the highest levels of administration, such as here's a Scott McClellan, of course, Raleigh, North Carolina, the one in Texas that was different, but that's where we know he was working. But here's a Scott McClellan working in transit in a city called Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, working as the general manager. Uh, uh, Wait a minute. Yeah, capital area transit. Let me just take a look at that. Oh, so they don't let me look at that, but capital area transit, and that goes back to the Washington D.C. area, I believe. But there's also Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I mentioned that. There's one other town here called New Braunfels, and I
New
don't know
Braunfels.
what is it. Did he work in New Braunfels also?
I haven't heard that, but that is that that's there. New Braunfels County there in Central Texas. I believe it'd be considered
So
Central Texas.
in this case, he was assistant director of transportation and capital improvement. Well, I am not saying that this is the same guy, but there's a lot of people in a lot of different places. Did he work for a company called Viola?
So Veolia is they are now TransDev. So yes, he did. That's
Oh,
the company I don't know if they acquisitioned it or bought it, but Veolia now is TransDev.
so this is kind of interesting because if you look up the triangle area of North Carolina, so there's other references about like Go Triangle, which is a transit advisory commission. So yeah, this is a guy with quite a track record. It seems like he's been working in transit for a long time and very experienced in transit. So it's interesting Rochester would suddenly hire this guy to come to Rochester, Minnesota. I'm just saying. I wonder how much money he makes working for uh, us here administering TransDev's interests in Rochester. Wonder what his salary is. That I can look up in a different way. But is he here full time or is he here part time?
Well, he's gone at least a couple days a week. The
Oh,
best I can figure, he'll stay here for a little bit and then he'll be gone for a while, back to North Carolina, and then he'll come back.
fascinating. So Rochester Public Transit has been in the news a little bit regarding, of course, TransDev when they purchased it. But it seems like, according to this one article, and I found this today, but this article is from June 5th, 2023. It was at KAAL TV, and they've been pretty good usually. The title is TransDev and RPT transit workers reach tentative agreement. But this article, for as important as it is, it's only like 5 lines long. It's just this little part up here. It's like this is a really important issue. So it seems like you need a bigger, and there's no byline here. Yeah, there's no byline. It doesn't say who wrote it at all. But how do you go in June? You reached a tentative agreement in June. Did dissatisfaction build up after that point? Or
Uh,
after
you,
the
I'm not sure. Some of that makes me kind of wonder, especially in regards to me, because we're going into another contract year. So that contract, it was over in 2022, and it took us until June of 2023 to get it settled. It's 3 years contract, so we're going into 2025 as the end of our contract with TransDev. So that makes you wonder, did they were they so dissatisfied with our contract or what we were able to get that they don't want to either negotiate with me, or what is their purpose going into a contract year for all of a sudden having an issue with me?
uh, and then moving from that point forward to December 21st of 2024. Let me see if that was the one I wanted to do next. Oh, no, this is so I wanted to go with this story next. It's a little bit longer, but only just. I mean, for as important as it is to Rochester, it says RPT employees allege union violations. So here's the funny thing about this title is that it misdirects in 2 ways, right? So the first misdirect is it says, the word allege, of course, says to the reader, well, it ain't necessarily true. This is just an allegation. Somebody's alleging something. Then it's alleging union violations, but it's that the workers' rights are what's being violated. It's the union violations are about like workers being upset that potentially their rights are being violated. That's the second misdirect, but that's November 27th, 2024. It's a very, very short article. And again, no byline. But can you speak to any of those violations of the contract that may have been committed by the company? Or if you don't, or you don't, you can't talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, I have no problem talking about it, and I do have to say kudos, and my wife is the one that contacted the media with all of this stuff going on. Because this, what they don't understand is that this affects families. It's not just about me. I have a wife and children. So it's not just about me. It's about our families. And so she contacted the media, and I have to say kudos to KAL Channel 6 News, especially with this last thing that's going on. They have been the only one that has been in contact, and the reporter, great gal Hannah, she's been good about sending an email to follow up to see kind of where the story's at and that kind of thing. So I do have to say, hats off to them for following the story, for trying to see it through. And the reporter definitely has empathy for our drivers and what we're going through right at the Christmas time.
Right.
So I'll say that at the beginning of it. I appreciate it. I'm not trying to plug a news channel on your channel here, but I do appreciate people that are willing to tell the truth and highlight what's going on.
Because none of the other news outlets are reporting on it at all that I can see, or
No,
miss
they
their
never
misrepresenting.
they never got back to my wife or even tried to contact me or our union office. So you're correct in that. So the contract violations in our contract, one of the biggest things that they're violating or have violated is in our contract. It stipulates if a union member, an ATU member, is going to be suspended or terminated longer than 2 days, that the ATU must be notified. In the case of the workers, that's in Rochester, that would be me that would be notified, uh, and it stays specifically by phone call or voicemail for the contact. That has not been happening. In my case, they would contact the union office uh, in the cities, and they didn't contact them. Matter of fact, when they called me in to give me my suspension, as soon as he picked up the paper and I seen my name on it, so I called our vice president, got him on the phone, and then he read out my suspension. And so when he did that, I looked at him. I said, "Did you contact our union office before you now?" This is Scott McClellan, that is. And he said, "No." So then I asked our vice president, I said, "Did you get any message from anybody about him going to suspend me?" And he said, "No." But they went ahead and suspended me, so they broke the contract. So that's the biggest, most glaring thing that they're violating, and they've done it consistently. It's like they feel like they don't have to contact, but this is a contract that we argued, on. We all signed it. Paul Buchanan name is on it. Our president's at the time's name is on it. This was agreed upon during our last contract negotiations. But now they're acting like it was never agreed upon or something. I don't know. It's pretty bizarre.
Well, that would be an easy thing to tell a white lie about, wouldn't it? I mean, not, but that's the easiest thing to kind of not do, to like not comply with, is like just not inform you, not tell you that you're being suspended, but then, or just say, oh yeah, we tried reaching the office, but your voicemail was full or nobody answered the phone. I suppose that'd be an easy like way to, to pretend that contact was attempted. but then you're like violating the contract, but you can get away with saying that you tried your due diligence or something to fulfill to fulfill the letter and the spirit of the contract. But just try to put the hat on for a second of being that manager side where
Well, it was kind of interesting that he admitted to it so freely, but that's because, and I asked him, I said, "Have you not even read our contract?" That would have been the first when he comes into a location. That you have no idea of the history, have no idea of the past practice, that would be the very, and it's a union shop. That should be the first thing you do is grab your union contract and read it.
Yeah.
If you're going to be the manager, that would be the first thing I would assume you would do. But that's why I don't think he's there in the spirit of that's another piece that falls into to place of not being in there in the spirit of being a placeholder until they get a new general manager, because he doesn't seem to care about the contract, doesn't seem to care about anything. I guarantee you, he has no empathy, no kind of for. I mean, this started happening right before Thanksgiving, and I just, to me, it's a real Scrooge life
Yeah.
scenario playing out, because and I'm going to tell you, and I can't get into their
No,
specifics,
no, don't
but
get into specifics. Yeah. Yeah,
this
don't.
this stuff that they're being suspended for and terminated for, and all of this, is not. It's nothing. I mean, it's bizarre that they're even doing this, and it's just, I don't know. It's just
Especially at
bizarre.
Christmas time. I mean, like you say, sir, especially at Christmas time, which is what this is Christmas Eve right now. We're talking on Christmas Eve. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to get this particular interview in this year on Christmas Eve is that this comes up. It reminds me of a novel written by Charles Dickens called A Christmas Carol, in which one Ebenezer Scrooge is visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and then the ghost of Christmas future. And like you say, there's something in bad faith about, I mean, normally with an organization that is a union shop and has relationships with the community, somebody should come from that organization to become something as important as a manager, a general manager, somebody who's going to go like right to the top of admin. You would want somebody who has a relationship with union workers and the head of the union, and then understands the operations and understands the contract, like you say. And the ghost of Christmas past element to it is, well, here we find this guy in Raleigh, and then we find him in Texas, then we find him back in Raleigh, now we find him in Rochester. This connotates, I maybe I shouldn't, but this shows a certain lack of connection to the people and the humanity side of the job. It shows a lack of, if there's a disconnect there, right? I'm just saying it's a very compelling story because now you got these families, these people, and men and women who are losing their jobs, getting suspended. I mean, at Christmas time, and then uh, it, you know, just going to keep people. There is a shortage of workers. You think of Crockett working in Scrooge's shop extra late because he can't go home on Christmas Eve. You know, it's it shows something going on. I'm trying to avoid using certain words because I don't want to give any legal advice to anybody, but you should have relationships with people, right? That are important. So it's the spirit of the contract, not just the letter of the contract.
Correct. And if people would only get to know me and see why I do what I do, it's a care for. I remember, and I often reference Rochester City Lions, even when I'm talking with Paul. And I don't know what happened there. I lost you for a
Uh,
minute.
Call came in. It's another guy who wants to do a podcast tonight, and I've been trying to get him to stop calling. So but it's a care for. You were saying it's a care for.
Yeah, so it's a care for the passengers and for the people we actually work for. I remember, and I reference Rochester City Lines a lot, and they get tired of it. Management gets tired of it. But I remember, I'm not saying everything at Rochester City Lines was perfect and exactly how we'd like to see it, but there was such a care for passengers. There was such an empathy for passengers. It was trained into us. And it now it's just a cookie cutter, a minimal amount of training. I mean, we don't get now currently we don't get anywhere near the training that we used to get at Rochester City Lines. Smaller, um, a much smaller operation as far as uh, money wise, but the training there was top tier. It was amazing, and even so, one of the top trainers that taught um, 90% of our current trainers, they won't let train, and our current trainers. But so it's just kind of crazy their approach to training. Training is the key to success, and that's something they seem very resistant to.
You know, I gotta say, in a town like Rochester, where it's very heavy on the high degrees, you got the masters, you got the PhD level people, you got the postdoctorate people. I'm not certain that people, sometimes people that are really textbook smart forget that it's the it's the trades that keep you warm and dry in the wintertime. It's the people that know how to do HVAC that keep the bus cool and warm. It's the people that know how to operate the lifting machinery, that get the wheelchair on and off safely and strap in the wheels so not and lift up the ramp so nothing goes the wrong way, nobody gets hurt. They know how to kneel the bus properly. They know how close to come up to the curb so that they don't create a big gap, and then people who have trouble stepping can't get beyond that gap, and they don't have to step down into the street. I mean, they're a driver under normal conditions is paying attention to 1,000 variables going on around them. If you're just driving a car, if you're driving this huge, massive house down the street, and everybody knows Rochester drivers are not the best drivers. I mean, good thing we don't have I don't want to get too animated. It's a good thing we're not, ready to go. People drivers in Rochester suck. They tailgate. They don't understand distance and motion and mass and force very well. So, and then the weather conditions. So training is key, and that knowledge that you get by doing it for hours and hours, so that knowledge is in your fingertips and comes so naturally. Uh, I don't think the book smart people that are in I don't think the elites of Rochester really get it. It's like, oh yeah, anybody can drive a bus. Oh, no, that's a skill. That's a
it,
big
it,
skill. So
it
training
most
is key.
definitely
Yeah.
is. And
Same.
that's another part of this that's concerning to me with all the stress. I mean, we got drivers, we can't feel utility when the utility's off because the people that, one of the guys that was number one about filling in when they would take off, they've terminated. Um, they've terminated the people that would pick up overtime. And then people are scared to pick up overtime because they don't want to be there extra hours for the extra scrutiny. I mean, Scott, by his account, in a letter that he sent me, watched 4 days of video of 8 hours, 4 days, just so he could, aha, gotcha moment to people. This is unreal when every bit of our lives are videotaped all the time. We're not mechanics. I mean, machines. We're not robots. And if you watch anyone for 8 hours a day on video, you're gonna see something you can say, "Aha,
Yeah.
gotcha." And he
Exactly.
watched,
Yeah.
and in the letter he said, I only watched 4 days. Only. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're subjected to, and we're begging, not begging. I hate that word. Um, but we're trying to let the powers that be know what's going on, and I don't know. It's just I don't know if they think we're being dramatic, but people are scared for their jobs. We've had some that actually have picked up jobs preemptively at another transportation in town and driving there part time just in case something happens at our company. We've got people that are applying over at the other transportation company because so they can get away from all of this that's going on over here. So it's a serious problem, and pretty soon we're not going to have enough drivers to keep up with what we're supposed to be keeping up to if this keeps going on. Now we're supposed to be getting a new general manager in on January 2nd. I have not met yet. We did get a new AGM in. He's from the community, at least. Seems like a really nice guy. Um, I have high hopes I'll be able to work with him. And like I said, I'll work with anybody. I'm not out to make anybody's job harder, including management. I just want what's best for the workers and for the passengers. That's it.
Yeah, and fear and loathing and fear and anxiety shouldn't be used as a management tool. And, and making people fear coming to work and worry that it's their last day and stress people up. And do you really want drivers to be worried about their security? It's much like the way the airline industry treated pilots of airplanes, overwork them. You don't want to have a pilot working endless shifts because the airline company doesn't want to just hire another pilot. They want to save money, so they keep it short staffed. um you don't want bus drivers working like extra long shifts or overtime. Too many hours of overtime means that your mental acuity and alertness can't help but suffer. And what well is in this article, it says Rochester Public Transit employees says they are short staffed. And so that was in December of 2024. So now we're short staffed. And so this was a few days ago.
Yep.
And this article, again, there's no byline. Oh, no, no. Okay, so good. Hannah Holland. That's a nice person, Hannah Holland.
Yeah, she's been excellent. I can't
Yeah.
say how much I really like her. She's a really good reporter.
She's a really, like, you just get this feeling from her that she's just a very, she has so much self-respect and she treats other people with respect, that when you encounter Hannah Holland, you just feel it brings out the best, in everybody around her. She's really tremendous. So Hannah Holland, this article is about, you know 12 or 13 lines long, sentences long. I mean, I wish we could see a real expose on what you guys are going through in the Rochester Transit. Um, but what is some other point that you want to mention about this situation? Are we understaffed? Are we short staffed?
Absolutely. We have to be in at full capacity for staffing. We was already a couple short. I believe it five, maybe six, to the best of my knowledge, that we are short. Well, when we're short that much, people have to pick up overtime, which is generally not a problem. People pick up a couple hours here, a couple hours there during the day or whatever. To supplement income, that's great. But when you got people that's scared to stay the extra hours, or now it's December, people want to take off. People got families, they want vacation time, they want to spend with their families. So we already have the max amount of people off that can be off. Plus, we lost these three, and we were already down a couple So yes, we're short staffed. We don't have the personnel to run the runs that we have currently. We have several that are filled via overtime. That's full time runs already. That's filled by overtime or part timers now.
Do you have in your current workforce people who have been there a long amount of time, like they've been there for several years and they're becoming expensive, so to speak, to the company? Are they like worth like if they were hiring someone new, is it a significant savings?
It is now. A couple years ago, I'm not sure what the ratio is now. It's a lot less. It used to be about 50-50. So 50 old timers, 50 newcomers, 50%, I mean, 50% new, 50% old. Now I just guess, and I would probably say 75-25. So 75 new, 25% of the old timers. Yeah, we've got people that's been there 30, 35 years, you know.
Is there a sense that like when you know a town as well as you do when you worked on bus routes and so forth, I mean, you have a lot of knowledge that it's hard to come by that knowledge when you've driven a bus on the streets. Like you start to know where everything is. You start to know where the lights work and where they don't. You start to know about traffic flow and weather conditions, whether it's cold or extra rain. You know where the water gathers. You know where the river where the creek tries to cross the road. You know, and you get all this knowledge. You know where the school kids line up by the corner to cross the elementary to cross the walkway with the elementary school guard, you know. So you start to have all this knowledge, right? um so that's something that's really hard to train you can't just get a newer version and replace an old timer and bring someone up to snuff. If they've been there for 10 years and they've driven a number of routes, then they're also useful maybe as substitutes when somebody's needed to fill in on another route and they basically know how it works. So um, it's not necessarily a good thing to try to start over with training, right?
It's not, and actually, that shows. I'm actually impressed with your insight on that. But it actually shows a lot.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, yeah. I was when you started talking, I was like, "I'll be," but
We heard
so it's kind.
in its natural context. I love it, man.
But yeah. So we know from experience, once again, what hills do we not stop in the middle of and not drop passengers off? You know, you'll hear the
Right.
old timers on the radio telling the new guys, "Hey, don't stop, and if you got somebody to drop off, stop at the bottom of the hill or stop at the top of the hill. Don't stop in the middle of the hill because you will slide back down it." Um, you
Oh,
know, that kind of stuff, and that's especially in wintertime. You know, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe three, we had a driver, and he was a new driver. I don't fault him for it. It was glare ice out on Teton Lane. I don't know if you know where that is.
not exactly.
It's it's northeast. It's over there close to Northern Heights, Northern Hills, kind of
Oh,
that area. But it's a steep hill,
that's the road that came to mind with that. Yeah,
and so we had a driver, and he actually started sliding. I'll wait till you come back here.
yeah. That guy tried to call me again.
I'm sorry if I'm keeping you too late here.
You're not. Let me just text him that I'm going to call him back. Wait a minute.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I will call you. All right. Okay. Okay.
But
Sir, sorry. My
yeah, a
bad.
few years ago, up on Teton Lane, he started sliding backwards, and then it completely did a complete flip around. The bus did totally out of his control, sliding down the hill,
Yeah.
and then he went face forward down the hill, hit a tree, knocked the tree over, and
Oh,
stopped about a quarter inch away from a house.
wow.
But that's one thing that a a an experienced driver would have said, nope, we'll go down it backwards because that's usually how we handle that hill. So yes, there's a lot of nuances to driving, uh, and having the, being older, being there. I don't know. I always say I tell new drivers when they mess up, make a mistake, they're all worried about it, they're stressed out. I say, hey, you can't do anything that hasn't been done before, so don't beat yourself up too bad.
You know what's
Um,
it's like a lot of us older guys learned how to drive on ice and snow by driving like hot cars in empty parking lots, so that you learn how to play with the ice and snow. And that once you've done those figure eights and loop de loops in a wide open parking lot, then you've got skills about how to turn with. If your car's out of control, you turn with and then you get back in control. It's harder to it's easier to do than explain. It's harder to explain than just do it when you've had that. And now my car has these anti-slip lock brakes on it, and it starts going like, no, I know how to do that. There's nothing automatic that knows how to do that. I know how to pump my brakes if I'm slipping. I know how to control the steering. But that's one of the things when things are over engineered, then you lose that connection between man and machine or woman and machine. But you lose that connect, like, being able to run a stick shift, right? That's just something that if you haven't learned it by age 20, you're probably never going to pick up on it in your
Well,
life.
that right, and that's kind of funny. My wife just posted a couple days ago, I guess on the last snowstorm. She said, "Hey, if you see them kids out doing donuts in parking lots or open streets, leave them alone. Let them have fun, because those are the same good old boys that will pull you out of a ditch if you wreck your vehicle."
Drop the microphone, word up truth, because that's where you learn your skills about how to drive, is by that feeling of your car being out of control. And I think that's like a lot of things these days. It's like some people never played outside when they were kids. They never rode their bike to a creek, and it kind of shows. It's like if they grew up in the basement with their PlayStation, they're never gonna they don't let them be a pilot, or you know you can see those drivers on the roads too. Don't let them be a bus driver. But so with these things going on, are there a couple more things that you want to say about this as we're coming up to the top of the hour? Um, is there any other insights about? I mean, by the way, I got to get this out there. I think a conversation like this is very informative. So I hope you have the opportunity to do similar conversations with Hannah Holland, because she has this ability to listen and to hear what you're really saying. I think I really hope that you could have an interview like this with her, because the public really needs to know how we need our bus drivers to be happy and rested when they come to work and not worried about losing their jobs. You don't want your dentist worried when he's chiseling on your teeth. You don't want your airline pilot worried that he's trying to pay off his student loans. You don't you want somebody who's like all about safety first, right? So
Well, that's
is any
correct. They want to preach and use it as a buzz line. Matter of fact, it was on our shirts for a long time. Be first, be first in safety, safety first, safety first, safety first. But when we give you the keys for safety, you're I don't want to do that. That's like here in the past, some of these write-ups, we're trying to go back and forth and talking to them, say, hey, it would be safer if we did it this way, or we would want to do it this way. Nope, we're going to do it this way. Well, you're arguing with the people that actually do it every day. They don't do it every day. Matter of fact, I asked them, Scott and Paul both, I said, can you please get in the bus and I'll go out there and video it. I want to watch how you do. We have a problem in our garage. It's a smooth finished concrete, and instead of broom finished, it's smooth finished, and then we got the wash bay, right? So
oh,
then when they pull out of the wash bay, it's soaking wet. You'll have a half inch of water on it, a quarter inch of water across it. Well, then when you go to stop, I have literally from going 5 miles an hour slid a bus over 2 feet. It's almost impossible to stop. It's almost impossible to stop. And if you slide into something, it's your hind end. You're the one going to get written up. You're the one. Well, you created a monster that's
Yeah.
almost impossible to drive in when it's wet, and we need to wash the buses. And then if you do slide into something, it's your fault. And there's ways to fix it. You could score the concrete. You could there's several things you could do. They don't want to do it because it costs money.
If it's a they could have put like in a polyurethane finish, they could have put some grit in that. Just that's an easy add. That's then problem solved. But then if the water's too deep, maybe your bus is hydroplaning a little bit. Seems like the speed's low for that. But another point would be um the hit if you hit the brakes and you start to move, um, there's no real time to pump or release the brakes. You're already sliding, right? And the weight of the bus is just carrying the whole thing forward, I imagine.
Yeah,
So
so what happens is when you turn the wheel to the so in that case it'd be to the left and the back of the engine, so there's no weight in the front. So the back pushes you, even if you let off the brake, it still pushes you straight ahead. It happens on ice that way as well. They don't grab and turn. So that's the problem we have.
I'm imagining, and I'm prepared to be wrong, but while I'm hearing this, I'm thinking you're in a cramped space. You have to turn left. You're trying to make some corner because the wall is right there, maybe, or you're supposed to go left to get out of that wash bay area. Well, probably buses are accelerating around there. And if they're accelerating, then they're letting off more emissions. So if the emissions settle down and stay on the floor, that creates a slick effect. And over time, it's like it becomes like an oily residue on cement. The
Well, it could be because I've told them that was one of my points that I said. I don't know what's going on, but I think it's been there 13 years. I said in the last couple years, it has gotten way worse. So maybe that's the effect.
if that area dries you, sorry, you need some detergent, like almost like a Dawn level detergent to get the oil slick off of there, possibly because that air settles down. It happens on highways if there's not a lot of rainfall for a long period of time. The highways, all of the exhaust just kind of settles down on the road like a cake, and then as soon as it rains, the adding the moisture to that oil creates like a oil slick effect. But
It's interesting.
I'm just full of Dutch uncle advice. I got all kinds of. I'll talk about stuff. Yeah, sorry. But do you think you can have like go ahead and say your final case for what you're thinking? Because I wonder if you might have some points that we've left uncovered at all.
Well, I guess the main thing that I would want people to know is we want to do what is best for our drivers and for our passengers. We want to be able to do our job. We know what to do. We know our job. There's a lot of us been there for quite a few years, and we've done our job not to perfection, but pretty close for a number of years. And listen to us. We know what we need, and there seems to be not a lot of wanting to listen to. There seems to be a lot of big corporate interference, and it just doesn't work for Rochester. It never has, and it's not going to. Let's get back to our main business, not being making money, but serving people.
That's right. And gosh, maybe there should be some like look at the corporate model. So money's all going over to Europe, and it's supposed to be our municipal transit system. It's Rochester is right in the title there. Rochester. I think most people assume that it belongs to the public, that it's a public, you know, but no, it's anyway, we went over that.
Well,
But
yeah, well, and you've heard me speak about it at council many times about this idea, and it doesn't seem to I don't know. It doesn't seem to be heard. Oh, one thing I did want to touch on. I know there was a lot here a while back on the that it would cost $3 million more dollars for the city to run public transit than it would to sub it out to uh, Transdev. There's a couple of things that's wrong with that. Number one is tell me another place in the world, any kind of business, when you cut out the middleman, it gets more expensive. It defies logic. It just simply defies logic. Number two, I looked at the numbers that the state ran, or the group they brought in uh, to study this
Uh-huh.
for the city. The amount of personnel that they said would be needed, Transdev is sorely understaffed. They called for 3 utility people. Transdev is adamant. I can show you a letter now that I just got this past week saying that we only need 2 in utility. They call for 11 dispatchers when BRT gets here. Now remember, BRT is only adding 12 more buses, but they want 11 dispatchers. We only have 4 on staff now. So that conflates the numbers. The third thing that conflates the numbers are if they're using Transdev bid model. So Transdev, the city last year ended up paying Transdev an extra close to $500,000 extra than what was expected. This year in November, when I did a data request, they were on track to pay Transdev over $1 million more than they asked for. So if you take 1 million more and spread it out over 5 years, that's $5 million. So then it would be 2 million under the projected cost, therefore making it cheaper for the city to run. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to listen to the numbers, but it's really phenomenal. And if you sit back and actually took the time to look at it, you can see what they're doing to conflate the numbers, and it's unreasonable and pretty wild once you look at it.
It really is. You are really good on those numbers. To think that they would think it's going to be more expensive by $3 million. Oh dear. If that's their best number, right? Because here's an article from City of Rochester News and Announcements. $84.92 million federal grant for transformative link bus rapid transit project. So the total, and the devil's in the details, because the last paragraph says the estimated cost of the Link BRT project is $143.4 million. With contingency funding, the project budget could reach a maximum of $161.5 million. But with government cost overruns, 161 is going to be surpassed at some point. But there, in this article, it says it's a milestone event held at Mayo Civic Center Plaza. Amy Klobuchar was there, featured a check presented by the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. The event brought together U.S. Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, United States Senator, two United States Senators in one place, with Rochester Mayor Kim Norton, Patrick Sieb, Executive Director of the Destination Medical Center, and then a whole bunch of Mayo Clinic people. And I can include the link to this below the story, but the money they're prepared to spend on the BRT project is astonishing. I had never looked at those numbers before today. What do you think is the cost what's the actual cost of a driver? Like one unit working full time for a year, with pay and benefits. Does that approach anything over $100,000?
Oh no, nowhere near it.
So one human being who's actually the heart and soul of the organization, driving a vehicle for a year is worth less than a fraction of what they're prepared to spend on this transportation, just to set it up. But what
And
is
I'd like to say on that point, it's kind of funny. There was no drivers there. We didn't know about it. As the union rep, I mean, we're the largest transit union in the U.S., and we wasn't even notified about it. So can you imagine? I mean, the people that actually do the work had no idea it was even going on.
and Mayor Norton, I'm certain, doesn't even ride a bus unless it's for a public relations event. She might get on with all the city council members and take a bus ride, but I I hope that this situation turns around, because the workers deserve a little more respect than that. And people are going to bust on me because I'm being all they'll say I'm being all pro union and pro union this and that. But I'm safety first, and I don't think this all this number crunching isn't going to make the buses any safer to operate. All of that money that these people are talking about for federal grants and other tax money added on by the city, if they don't treat the workers right, none of it's going to work out well.
Well, I wish, just touching on that, and I'm sure you will probably get some flack. And, it's just another unconventional interview. You've been kind of doing a few of those here lately. Uh, so I'm glad to put my name in that unconventionalism. But, when did labor, being for the working man, turn into such a partisan issue? And that's one thing that I've really tried to strive to do is reach across both aisles. I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican, independent, conservative, liberal. We're the working people ought to support working people. And if you can't look at this corporation that we're dealing with, TransDev, and see the need for labor unions, but I don't I don't know what to tell you, because if it wasn't for labor union, these everyone would be just steamrolled, and it would be a horrific situation. I think people need to stop to get away from this partisan divide over labor. And I really wished, and I'll say this of labor unions, I think we need to start working with everyone across the aisle. It don't matter if there's a D and R in front of your name. We've got to be about the workers. It's not about politicians. It's about the workers. Let's stand up for workers' rights.
That's right. That's right. And so many directions we could take this conversation in. And I think it's only by having a relaxed conversation like this for as long as it is. And maybe not everybody's going to, maybe some people will click through it. They won't stick with it like through the whole thing straight away. But there's a weightier substance to having a conversation like this than to just go for a headline and a few, you know, misdirected, the press, the legacy media. But that's um so I really, really value this time being able to talk to you. And if you have any other people in the union who want to speak out, that's great too. And I hope I get a chance to come and meet all the people that are in your union at a meeting someday. It'd be great to be there with you guys and say, look, I ran as a Republican, and hey, and pick up. Anyway, this isn't about me, but it shouldn't be about partisan politics. It should be about
Absolutely.
wanting to put the people in our community first. And look, if all of our profits are going overseas, whether it's a Swedish firm called Equity or a French company called Transdev, or now the Rethman Group, we didn't even get into the Rethman Group out of
Right.
Germany trying to buy up the French interest from the French. Oh, you said that. Yeah, it's the French government. Yeah. So the Rethmans from Germany are trying to buy out the French company. So we're just being passed around by a hot potato, and the people at the bottom are the ones that suffer, and the riders suffer really, and
Yep.
the buses do.
Absolutely.
If the buses don't like to have an untrained hand at the wheel, just like a horse doesn't like to have someone who doesn't know how to handle the reins.
That's
Too tight.
correct.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for your time today. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. I really appreciate the chance to get to highlight our drivers. We have a great group, and I'm really proud to represent them, and I just want to work hard for them every chance I get. So I do appreciate it, Wes. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, sir.
Merry Christmas. You have a good one.
Thank you.